So, Wired is slop and it should not be trusted with firearms journalism. So, what is Wired? Wired is legacy media, originally in the form of a magazine that was originally founded in 1993, and originally covered computers and technology. And it did so in an optimistic way, which transformed the audience's perception on technology and its impact for the future, with iconic covers such as in 1997, The Long Boom. Now fast forward almost 20 years later, and what do we have over here? Well, close, but no, I'm talking about Wired devolving itself more and more to tripe and slop, and has abandoned much of its technology-focused reporting, and instead it has gotten quite bad. And it's kind of started since its 1998 acquisition by Condé Nast, the same media group which owns The New Yorker, Vogue, GQ, among others, and the quality has gone downhill. So, a lot of it now would be blaming gamers. And a lot of it would be just refusing to buy bad games or to expose corruption in video games journalism and the video games industry, especially with it being a problem in the early 2010s. And this shows in some of the articles as published. Let's take a look at this article published on December 24, 2024, called 2024 was the year the bottom fell out of the games industry. And it's not about video games being bad. Yeah, they are getting pretty bad nowadays, especially with like the garbage out there. You have all the DLC, games being buggy on day launched, all sorts of stuff that isn't really good. But instead of focusing on that sort of aspect, it just blames gamers, where sales of video games such as Concord and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League ends up going down the toilet, with Concord, only barely having any players and being offline in, less than 2 weeks, if that. Because of it being pressured by DEI firms such as Sweet Baby Inc. on game developers, their investors, and the publishers. And we have better games out there, either from indie devs as well as from foreign game development studios, which don't, rely on this sort of like slop-induced investment, such as from like BlackRock or whatever. For example, you have Marvel Rivals, you have Black Myth Wukong, which doesn't have this DEI enforced poison, instead comes from Chinese game studios, and games are genuinely better. For example, Marvel Rivals being a hero shooter, being better than Overwatch, and all of those sorts of problems and baggage with that sort of game development with Activision Blizzard. Gross. And scary. And also Black Myth Wukong, which is a lot better. Doesn't have this sort of nonsense, such as the reboot of Saints Row, which is a disaster. We look at another article. We have Gamergate's Aggrieved Men Still Haunt the Internet, published on August 15, 2024, which talks about the 10-year anniversary of Gamergate. So, what is Gamergate? Gamergate is about the discovery of corruption and the lack of ethics in the game industry, as well as games journalism, and I apply journalism to games journalism extremely loosely. Focusing on major figureheads such as Zoe Quinn or Brianna Wu, or aka John Walker Flint, hailing them as some sort of like hero or some sort of spearhead, but no, they're just a centerhead for corruption with Zoe Quinn and conspiracy with 5 guys going in and out, and I'm not talking about fast food hamburgers. It is about corruption and lack of ethics in video game journalism, and it led to a paradigm of the discovery of lack of ethics and a whole bunch of corruption in institutions and corporations, media, politics, and all sorts of stuff, and how even simple things like just wanting to play video games is now poisoned, or to do anything else for that matter. And it's likely why we're in this crappy situation right now. But instead of focusing on this sort of corruption within our own institutions, it just blames gamers and persecutes them. So, it is true that gamers are indeed probably one of the most persecuted groups out there. And as the saying goes, from the perspective of Wired, are we out of touch? No, it's the gamers that are wrong. So, a real gamer moment from them, and real gamer persecution. Another thing that Wired has done is a shift on the focus of firearms, such as stuff made from subtractive manufacturing processes as well as additive manufacturing processes controlled by computers. So one piece of firearms-related media published by Wired would be a YouTube video uploaded on May 19, 2025 by Andy Greenberg. And his video would be focused on computer-controlled additive manufactured firearms frames related to a high-profile incident outside of Manhattan office involving a United Healthcare CEO. And the host of the episode, Andy Greenberg, has conducted himself in bad faith, putting all sorts of loaded questions to both James Reeves, who is a major contributor to the Firearm blog.
I wanted to know, how easy is it for someone to build a deadly and untraceable weapon like this now? Has the law finally caught up with the reality of ghost guns? To find out, I decided to make one. So I went to Araby, Louisiana, to a gun range outside New Orleans, owned by James Reeves, an attorney and a popular YouTuber.
James, nice to meet you.
Our experiment here that we're trying to do is to actually 3D print Luigi Mangioni's gun, just like he did.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, thank you. But my question for you, first, as a lawyer, is all of this actually legal?
Totally legal, but it depends on the purpose. So if you're making a firearm for yourself, there's no prohibition in the Gun Control Act of 1968 that would prevent you from making a gun for yourself. If you're making it for someone else, if you're selling them, distributing, totally different story. You've got to have a license.
A lot of states have made this illegal, but here in Louisiana, like, we're still good to go?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. We have free country down here.
As well as Print, Shoot, Repeat, a major computer-controlled additive manufactured firearms frames promoter and enthusiast.
Of this, it seems like a commercial piece.
The design of this particular pistol was so good in 2020 that it's still the go-to Glock style frame. It's open source and designers can take the raw blueprint of this thing and then add their own tweaks to it.
If you really were like a lone wolf killer trying to make this thing alone in your garage, where would you learn this?
Or if you were just someone who's into building guns and not a lone wolf killer. But there are assembly videos, particularly like the sites where you download some of the files, but it's a lot of trial and error.
And the whole entire video is just full of misinformation and nonsense, especially with the claims from both Greenberg himself, as well as his kind of unsafe handling of firearms or very lack of proficient handling of firearms, as well as from the gun control side of the story, where there'd be several false claims that, like ghost guns from that are from homemade, what's called combustible devices, which launch projectiles, are in the same category as firearms with defaced serial numbers, which are illegal to do and illegal to have, or firearms that are made before the 1968 Gun Control Act, which simply did not need serial numbers, and those are lawful to own and transferred, and are sold by firearms retailers and firearms manufacturers, professional firearms manufacturers at the time.
3D guns are a whole new ballgame. I think 3D printed guns are about to have their moment.
I've covered this world of 3D printed guns since 2013. And back then, I wrote about this believing it was kind of a science fictional future phenomenon.
I do not think this is a future problem. ATF estimated that between 2016 and 2022, over 70,000 ghost guns were recovered at crime scenes across the country. The technology has really come of age. The printers are better, the materials are better, and the designs are better.
There are models of gun that have come out in the last few years. These almost fully 3D printed semi-automatic rifles that truly look like something out of science fiction that are really powerful and really accurate.
One of the things that has developed over the last decade or more is a community of creators and sharing designs and improving upon each other's designs. And a lot of that are values that creators, I think, really can embrace. But we can't lose sight that this is about firearms. You have a right to personal protection, but when you're purposefully creating firearms that are flooding communities with illegal firearms that are used in crimes, and when we're innovating to make them harder to regulate, you have to ask yourself the question, just how serious is this community about doing their part to protect the community? I mean, we have seen already that you can actually have most of the parts of the firearm be fully 3D printed. That is the state of the art right now. And that is going to be the next chapter of the ghost gun problem in this country.
And overall, the entire message of the video is just fear-mongering, as well as a distraction from the failures of the state to keep known criminals in jail, or more ideally, 6 feet underground. And these criminals would have multiple crimes, rap sheets larger than a phone book, which would lead up to horrendous murders to the public, such as on high-profile incidents involving passengers in public transportation. There are several I can show and list over here. And these are adjudicated as mentally ill or have committed felonies, especially with threats and with violence. And those people should be kept away from society, not disarming the public or dismantling the Constitution and the Second Amendment. We can go and take a look at a more recent article published by Wired called "The Hard Left Shooters Leading a Gun Culture Revolution," written by Manisha Kirschman and published yesterday as of time of recording on November 24, 2025. The writer was hesitant of writing the article until Charlie Kirk got assassinated on September 10, 2025. And this article would focus on the oppression Olympics of its participants, as well as them LARPing as the Albuquerque, New Mexico homeless on In-Range TV's brutality competition. And I believe this competition would be the High Desert Brutality one over in Ohio. And there is another article which also fluffs up the competition, as well as In-Range TV, published on Recoil magazine, in which the body of that would show reckless activity creating a huge bushfire. But we'll focus on the Wired article for now. And looking through the contents of it from top to bottom, there are some that stick out. The article would cite statistics from the Gun Violence Archive, which the article would claim, as well as the statistics cited, that transgender individuals would represent a small minority of the mass shootings conducted within the United States recently. However, the source does not really show, or the article, that about per capita of how many transgender individuals do exist within the United States, and per capita about how many of them have conducted or the source of a mass shooting, or that the large number of mass shootings in the United States, which demographics those come from, population represented per capita for the total population of the United States, as well as if these people who have conducted mass shootings in the first place are already prohibited possessors of firearms in the first place. How curious. And this demonstrates the fallacy of using statistics from a poor quality source, and it doesn't really contribute or add anything to the article. Later on, the article would fluff up In-Range TV, focusing on the participants of the competition. For example, we have one transgender individual going by the alias of Jane Bird, and Jane Bird would be a member of the local Socialist Rifle Association chapter until that became defunct. For those of you who are not aware, the Socialist Rifle Association, both from a national basis, where they call themselves the national chapter, I don't know if they call that the National Socialist Rifle Association, much how the local chapters call themselves, say, the Dallas-Fort Worth Socialist Rifle Association, or the Central SRA or so, but might as well call it the National Socialist Rifle Association for clarity, or for consistency. And talk about that, and that members of the Socialist Rifle Association and their local chapters have done acts that are complete danger to the American public, as well as complete antithesis to the Second Amendment. For example, you have Allison Tesla, aka Adam Lansky, conducting multiple fire bombings on a Salem, Oregon Tesla car dealership, and he is a member of the SRA. You have Benjamin Song, a known member of the Dallas-Fort Worth SRA, as well as many members known to the SRA or the Elm Fork John Brown Gun Club, participating in a coordinated attack against a ICE facility on July 4th, 2025, near Dallas, Texas, which Song ended up as FBI's most wanted until he was captured inside of an Antifa safe house after a warrant looking for him for his arrest. Additionally, you have numerous anti-Second Amendment statements by local chapters of the Socialist Rifle Association, as shown here. Additionally, in a conversation with two members of the Indiana Socialist Rifle Association on a focus trip livestream, which I personally was involved in, the members of the SRA would not view inclusivity of the Second Amendment to anyone they would deem to the right of Mao, for example, like a generic conservative person. And this was demonstrated as a direct statement by the member in the live stream. And for the Socialist Rifle Association or its members or supporters to claim that they support the Second Amendment is completely contradictory to their own actions and the judgment of their character.
I guess, let's say a generic conservative person, they're allowed in, right? They're just a normal generic conservative person. What's too far right and what's too far left? Set some boundaries.
I would say it depend on like what type of like conservative, because like a lot of like conservative people have like certain like social believings that I don't know would mesh very well with like our type of organization.
Even a generic conservative is too far right.
I would say, well, not like, I guess inherently, like we're talking about like in social aspects, not like in economic things, because we don't really like, we have people that are like economically like centrist or right leaning, but I guess for like social like aspects, we don't want like behaviors that are like sort of like, well, I don't like anti like, fuck, I keep fucking saying like I'm.
So you're good.
Within the Wired article, we have a focus on Omar and Orashan, aka Tactical Girlfriend, aka Jasmine Jade, as one of the large subjects within the article, hyping up this individual a lot. If you don't know, Tactical Girlfriend is a contributor and likely a member of the Puget Sound John Brown Gun Club, as evidenced in archived articles on their official website. Also in 2019, one of its prominent members, Willem von Spronsen, has conducted a firebombing and attack on the Tacoma Ice facility with HME, firebombs, and a rifle, until he was shot dead by people defending the facility. They're also the likely large belligerents and controllers of Chaz or Chop over in Seattle, Washington in 2020. And also the framing of the thumbnails on videos published by Tactical Girlfriend is incredibly uncanny. It looks a lot like this piece of Japanese art that was published before, or this video game. Grim and scary and disturbing. Yet, in the article, it would state that Tactical Girlfriend would use a mask to claim to hide identity, yet the appearance is incredibly conspicuous, and this sort of effort is all done in vain. And the article would even state that. Later on, the article would pivot towards the topic of the Charlie Kirk assassination, which the alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson, as well as a focus on Lance Twigg, the roommate and boyfriend of Robinson. And they would talk about how Twigg is allegedly a transgender individual, even though that is confirmed by earlier published leaks from a individual of the friend circle towards Turkey Tom, which confirms Twigg is a transgender individual who has MK'd Ultra'd himself on drugs and hormones, as well as indoctrination through his participation in the university. What's funny is that one of the quotes within the article from one of the subjects, Bird, would say, "Please don't let it be one of us," after the announcement of Kirk's willful killing. Later on in the article, it would go and focus on Carl Crosado of InRange TV. Carl would also be the lead organizer for the brutality match. And Carl will be quoted in the article saying that he doesn't think that there is a way to fix the old gun community. And the old gun community would be just anyone within the firearms-related space that would reject Carl's far-left views. And by fixing it, it would essentially mean burning bridges with people who previously worked with him, such as Ian McCollum, the former co-host of InRange TV, as well as the founder of Forgotten Weapons, as well as Matt Landfair of Primary and Secondary, a firearms expert-led podcast. Also, Matt Landfair is a cop, so that doesn't help, as well as Dugan Ashley of Carnicon. Carl would also lash out and attack others, like he did with Micah Mayfield, the former cameraman for the Grandson channel, for him making a joke, while simultaneously attacking Polinar Tactical, a Central European firearms media group, as well as Vado Stelka. Also note with Vado Stelka is that he attacked that company, and also Vado Stelka reached out and tried helping out Carl to facilitate and host the firearms competition, the brutality competition, over in Finland, which is a huge logistical feat. But with them supporting Ian McCollum, as well as the celebration of Finnish culture and heritage, such as that of Larry Torni or Larry Thorne, due to him defending his homeland against communists. Carl would also attack others for his own claim of them not being American, such as Jeff Shee, the current chairman of the Pima Pistol Club, because Shee would just reject Carl's endorsement of the far left. In fact, it's quite hypocritical for Carl.
But they should know that this person has been on the internet for years as these three aliases, posting some of the most vile things you'll find in this space, and is now soliciting to run a match that is intentionally exclusive and is designed to keep out Americans and their firearms rights here in the Tucson area to shoot at a range at a match that has historically for decades been a place that they can have a good time, build community, skill, and safe gun handling. So this goes against all mission statements of the public range of the Pima Pistol Club. It goes against general decorum of being an American. It goes against general American beliefs about the Bill of Rights and the Second Amendment and how it should apply to American citizens. And he's just a terrible person.
To support and endorse these groups that advocate for the abolishment of the Second Amendment and the Constitution. And also Carl would celebrate those who endorsed and celebrated Charlie Kirk's willful killing. And there have been several instances of that. While the article would focus on Carl's Blue Sky post, which would, quote, say, "Assassinations are not self nor community defense. This country is not at war, and we should all strive for it not to be. Violence begets violence, and it is never acceptable to instigate it." And the article would claim that Curie Farms, as well as ARFCOM or AR15.com, blamed and accused him of being a cover ass mode. However, those allegations are in fact true. And Carl would do full damage control immediately after the Charlie Kirk assassination on September 10, 2025. For example, on the official InRange TV Instagram page, there'd be a 24-hour Instagram story post endorsing a better way to a celebration of Kirk's willful killing, where that would be the slightly better statement, where essentially saying that Charlie Kirk deserved it for exercising his own peaceful assembly and freedom of speech, as well as a now deleted Reddit post in response to Mad Mike 32, who is a frequent commenter and poster on the Socialist Rifle Association, the Socialist RA subreddit, as well as what might be the InRange TV subreddit, where by Mad Mike 32 would say, quote, "We can agree that Kirk got what he deserved, and still accept that political violence is likely to make things worse." And then Carl would reply in the official InRange TV Reddit account, "Two things can be true at once." Also within the article itself, there'd be a photograph of one of the patches of one of the participants saying that they want to kill anyone that would reject validating and supporting mental illness. It's incredibly disturbing. And Carl is full of shit in saying that he does not advocate for Charlie Kirk's willful killing. He in fact celebrates it. Deplorable. So in the last paragraph of the article, it would then focus again on Tactical Girlfriend and what his own thoughts of what an American Civil War would look like, a second American Civil War, and that he would observe that it would look very similar to what Italy's Years of Lead would look like, which in the 1960s all the way to the 1980s, political extremists would cause violence and cause damage to society. And finishing that with a quote in the article, "Being a trans person in the world is inherently dangerous. There are those who hate us for no good reason, no matter where we go." And I agree with this quote, but I'm very confused by a lot of the rest of it. For example, the first part of the quote, "Being a trans person in the world is inherently dangerous," and I fully agree. If it's a danger to themselves, there are numerous statistics I can cite from the NTSB as well as the UCLA regarding that. And is it for a danger towards others? Certainly. For example, you have anarcho-trans militia such as Community Armed Self-Defense, where you have Charles Lando as the figurehead threatening to kill cops and then opening fire on the police in the middle of a middle school, as well as the successor organization Doll Squad, and that they want to seek and kill anyone who disagrees with them, anyone to the right of Mao, branding them as colonizers, Nazis, as well as fascist. You have all these groups that I've covered on the Glow So Bright channel, Some of them have done high-profile incidents that has led to, say, death, property damage, anything that revolves around domestic terrorism. You have Adam Lansky, aka Allison Tesla, on multiple occasions, shooting up a Tesla car dealership, pointing weapons at motorists, and using firebombs. You have Benjamin Song's Antifa cell, attacking the Prairieland Ice facility near Dallas, Texas, and ended up on FBI's Most Wanted. You have transgender-led, anti-Christian, accelerationist violence, for example, on the 2023 Nashville school shooting by Audrey Hale. You have, on 2025, the Annunciation Catholic Church school shooting over in Minneapolis. And those are just some of the examples I can list off, and it's not just that, there are several more out there. And then the second part of the quote, there are those who hate us for no good reason. That is completely untrue. They want to kill those that politically disagree. They want and wish for death for those that are not wanting to be compelled to validate their own mental illness. And this is especially true with the focus on the Charlie Kirk assassination in the article. And it's also apparent in the photos published in the article as well. So, you wonder why this is a problem. You wonder why people don't like this stuff. So on that confusing note, what are the final thoughts on this Wired article titled "The Hard Left Shooters Leading a Gun Culture Revolution"? The author, Marissa Kirshner, fails to do her own basic journalistic duties of using thorough research and citing low-quality sources for statistics and information in writing the article. And it just further shows that Wired isn't about supporting the Second Amendment. It promotes the destruction of it through endorsing of gun control and supporting those that want to disarm, kill, and destroy those who support the Constitution and reject far-left political ideology. Wired is Slop and it should not be trusted with firearms journalism.